O nosso querido Matheus VM e o vídeo é a história do ISEKAI. Aí o Shield Konosuba, Inuyasha, Sal, mais more.
ReZero, Spirited Away, and The Wizard of Oz all have in common. How about No Game, No Life, Sword Art Online, and the Arnold Schwarzenegger film, The Last Action Hero? You see, they all fall under the subgenre known as Isekai.
Boa edição, hein?
Last Action Hero?
The Japanese word for different world.
O dinheiro é
It's
legal,
a genre
né?
where someone from our world goes to another world, or someone from another world comes to ours. Typically, it comes with the benefit of fantastic powers or mythical destiny. Over the past decade, these stories have skyrocketed into popularity. With animes like That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, Rock Horizon, Gate, Drifters, Restaurant to Another World, Saga of Tanya, and so much more. With one or more isekai anime every season, the subgenre has become so popular that according to Kakuyomu.jp, light novel and manga publisher Kadokawa actually stopped accepting light novel submissions featuring isekai in 2017 because there's just too damn many of them. And though the term didn't really become popular until around 2010, this is based on trending Google searches, so take that with a grain of Google salt, there's no shortage of shows that fit that description. So how did this thing all start? Well, the whole thing started with Urashima Taro, a Japanese folklore that originated before the century. It's about a fisherman.
Então. Quando eu, na primeira parte lá, guerreiro, eu fiquei
levantou
quieto.
Uma amarelinha, né?
Pois é, levantou. Agora
fudeu, né?
Ih,
caralho.
O plágio.
Porra, como é que você tem 17 inscritos e você plagia a Crunchyroll com 800 mil stories pra ninguém ver? Normalmente é o contrário, né? Você tem que ser o maior e plagiar o pequeno, pô.
The turtle was then rewarded with access to a mythical underwater kingdom. Eats, drinks, and is entertained by the beautiful princess Onime, given the true hero treatment for his good deed. Now, after a few days, he gets homesick and heads back home, only to find out 3 centuries had passed while
tem que ver as costas, né? Mas pela frente não dá. Mas eu não gosto muito dessa máscara do...
O peru!
E5X Gensim, Fogo on the Rocks.
PS5 versus Genshin. Ah, mas aí tu se perdeu, Marcelo. Aí, viu? Não pode te elogiar, né? Não pode te elogiar que tu vê com essa porra desse Genshin, né? Porra, para de...
Porra de Genshin, cara.
Pô, não pode te elogiar que tu veio, né? É foda. Mas muito obrigado, muito obrigado.
Appearing for seemingly a few days, only to return home a decade or two later aren't unique to Japan. Ireland has a rich folklore surrounding the fair folk, with legends and warnings
pelo menos ele não pegou tudo, né?
with the fairies and come back
ele fez pior, né?
Later. It's not just folk tales too, though. Popular novels like Alice Adventures in Wonderland, Peter Pan...
Ah, caralho! Muito foda. Vai tomar no cu.
Caralho, velho. Que louco. Gente, qual que é a chance? Sukiaki.
Bota no mesmo.
Se vira, tá?
Bota junto.
Me desculpe, Sukiaki, mas se vira, porque sem querer te pegou um plágio foda. Sem querer.
Caralho, velho.
Porra, no maior... Pô, de bobeira, a gente pegou um plágio muito forte. Tu já fez live jogando Genshin? Eu não, o Matheus, acho.
A gente fez pra...
A gente fez pra campanha do...
Nunca teremos patrocínio na Crunchyroll? Ah, isso aí nunca tem mesmo.
Mas a Crunchyroll foi plagiada, pô. Não foi quem plagiou.
É, a Crunchyroll que foi a plagiada. A gente tá ajudando a Crunchyroll.
Could also be considered a soft example of an isekai. Interesting. Now, in Western isekai stories, most people go through wardrobes, popping in and out of movie screens, or even go through doors and trees. But in Japan, you have things like Chuck-kun running over you, crazed man stabbing you, getting run over by a train, reading books, playing VR games, or just playing games, full stop. No matter the difference of how they get to the other world, the appeal of isekais is global and has spanned centuries. Still, the only culture to give a name to this specific literary type of escape fantasy was Japan.
Ah, não. Vamos pro...
how did
Porra,
this
eu vi de
widely
tudo.
popular
Absurdo.
genre make it into anime? My girl, Sally the Witch. Who the is Sally the Witch? Sally is also an example of a reverse isekai, but she was the first popular anime to include the genre in any way, shape, or form. According to my anime list, Sally the Witch started airing in the 60s and has had several remakes since then. It's about a girl from a magical world who comes to our boring, mundane human world. Now, Sally was mischievous, Sally was fun. Instead of learning about a fantastic world through the main character's eyes, we learned how fantastic our world could be through someone else's eyes. Inspired by Bewitched, Sally was the first popular example of the magical girl genre in anime, and our first taste of how isekai would look in the industry. In fact, the concept of fantastic
muito
characters
antiga
coming into the
assim, é
mundane
melhor ver só
world
uns
was such a
pedaços mesmo.
success, it was used in several times, all by magical girl shows. Popular examples like Miki Momo, Lalabelle, and Majoko Meguchan all featured the same concept, magical girls coming to the mundane world. Now, in 1970, we have...
Pô, é uma... Pausa aí. É uma pica, né? Que ele realmente fez um vídeo pior, que ele cortou todo a questão de que é um gênero que era mais associado a mulheres e ele foi transformado depois. Isso foi cortado fora. Muito foda.
É até interessante se parar a pensar por esse lado, né?
Sim.
Porque aquela questão de estar presa dentro de casa, né? Enfim, toda essa questão, e aí com um tempo se transformou, né? Não ficou uma questão apenas feminina, né?
Sim.
Have Osamu Tezuka and Eiichi Yamamoto going horny on main with an isekai of their own called Cleopatra, where we have the main characters Jiro, Harvey, and Mary using a time machine to transfer their minds into the bodies of people.
Cleopatra.
This is to thwart the plan of evil aliens, apparently, and also the dude Harvey's actual life goal, I guess, is to have sex with Cleopatra. Then we get to 1983 with an anime called Seisenshi Dunbine, also known as Aura Battler Dunbine. Now in this story we have Shozama and this motorcycle, and they get sent to another world to man fantasy mechas. Makes it sound like the motorcycles manning the mechas. Anyway, in the 1990s is when isekai really gets a kickstart. With the introduction of an anime...
Pô, sinto falta de um canal mais de contar as coisas, velho. No geral, assim, nem lá fora tem tanto assim. É que dá trabalho, né?
Dá mais trampo, né?
Called Fushigi Yugi by Studio Pierre.
A gente tem pouco material também aqui em português, né?
With the manga debuting back in 1992, the story is about two middle school girls, Miyaka Yuki and Yui Hongo, who finds a book and are transported to another place and time. Miyaka becomes a hero, destined for miracle romances, while Yui, who was sent back to the human world, winds up becoming a villain. It's also worth noting that Miyaka actually mirrors a lot of modern isekai protags because, like many of them, she could have been considered an anime otaku in her time. Fushigi Yugi also falls into a lot of the quintessential shoujo tropes of the 90s. Tropes like impossible for romance that will eventually prove love can conquer all, acts of self-sacrifice to save the world, and confronting renegade, forced motivation to save others. Anyway, it had all the drama of a soap opera, only instead of live-action actors, it was sparkly-eyed schoolgirls and pretty anime boys.
Não, mas chinês eu
This
uso.
becomes a template for the modern isekai story. A boring-ass mundane main character from a pitiful, mundane human world gets transported to another, more exciting world in which they are the hero. This is our award-winning formula, which is replicated again and again and again and again and again, and once more for good measures, again. Around the same time, we get our first shonen story in the genre, El-Hazard. Though the anime started a full year earlier, Fushigi is given the credit because the manga predates the El-Hazard manga.
Não lembro nada da história.
3 high school students and their history teacher is transported to another world and becomes the pivotal heroes of an ongoing war. This sort of familiar format becomes the new foundation for modern isekai before it was even called isekai. But even with El-Hazard, isekai seemed to be world. Escaflowne and Magic Knight Rayearth both came out around 1996 as well, along with the Inuyasha manga. For one reason or another, there was a story upon stories of schoolgirls being transported into a magical
Tô com uma aba aberta aqui da Guerreiras Mágicas que apareceu no Drive lá dos animes.
18 volumes of manga, 52 episodes of anime, an English dub, 2 OVAs, a light novel series, and 2 spin-off series. Don't spawn out of thin air. There had to be a demand for them. And over a decade, Fushigi Yugi stayed fairly popular among Japanese girls. Didn't quite have the same staying power in the US, but why wouldn't other studios and publishers be eager to replicate that. And they weren't wrong. Magic Knight Rayearth has sold over 200,000 copies of the Dark Horse English translation alone. This number doesn't even touch on what it did in sales worldwide or how it performed in its Tokyo Pop release. And this overall doesn't even hold a candle to how Inuyasha performed. No sir. Not only was Inuyasha's many Western anime audiences first look at Isekai, it's a series that has staying power to spare. And with good reason. Rumiko Takahashi knew how to write a manga that appealed to audiences.
Eu querendo te odiar, Rumiko Takahashi, mas você não me ajuda.
Dark themes, yokais, sword fights, and crass humor. Basically, you had delicious goodies everyone. Inuyasha was a perfect blend of shoujo and shonen that holds a deep nostalgia.
Ai, um dia eu tenho que sentar pra ler isso aí, velho.
The original Toonami era.
Ah, dá pra ler de comédia,
Hã?
But I digress. So why
dá pra ler de comédia dela, não precisa ler
so
isso,
popular with the shoujo audience? It's been touched on previously, but Isekai
Mas
is a
aquele é
genre
importante
that
Isekai, né?
day-to-day doldrums.
Amameio não,
isso é.
não tem como
Designed to be a self-insert fantasy.
Ursetsu.
That anyone
Amameio é
woman
intancável
could
pra
be
mim.
plucked out of their boring, extremely plain monotony and placed into some amazing adventures is widely appealing, as proven by story after story being created within the genre. But this sort of thing can appeal to everyone.
Eu também não, da Rumiko Takahashi.
Why girls specifically? This could be because girls were painfully aware of the limited power in their world, our world. This sort of fantasy that whisked you away to another must have been fulfilling when the current reality was, you know,
Pô, bom vídeo, cara.
fulfilling. There's absolutely no shortage of stories of girls being secret princesses.
O maluco lá do primeiro vídeo também achou.
Shoujo genre just takes it a step further. But they're not just the princesses, they're the heroes. They're the key of saving someone or even the world. Even if someone they save themselves, it's still far more appealing to do the saving rather than being saved. And it wasn't just Isekai that helped illustrate this climate. Don't forget the 90s is when magical girls changed from idols like Nami to warriors like Sailor Moon. This all ties in with a very strong girl power movement of the 90s. In America and Japan, there seemed to be sort of a cultural push for girls to stop fitting into some of the meager roles assigned to them. There seemed to be no match for a girl's thirst for power, but shoujo's hold on the isekai genre started to change as we enter the new millennium. The early 2000s brought a landscape shift, literally, with the rise of personal computers. The commonality of computers and love of the internet
Boa noite, Noedri. Muito obrigado. 7 meses, estamos juntos.
Story and new audiences to go along with it.
Olha
Box
ele ali.
office hit of the Matrix and the rise of cyberpunk helped create the perfect climate for the next stage of isekai. As we enter the digital age, so did our obsession with it. Shows like Serial Experiments Lane were a soft transition involving some isekai elements while figuring out how they fit into a digital landscape. Lane stepping into the virtual space known as The Wire and becoming a sort of god because of a connection to it is very parallel to many isekai stories. The ambiguity of The Wire and the fact that other people can access the space keeps many people from considering it a true isekai story. But its ability to combine elements, isekai and cyberpunk elements, is a good example of how the genre moved into the next stage. As computers got better, gaming got better, and the rise of MMOs were unparalleled. And most of the stereotype dictates that most of these games were being played by teenagers and young adults, not preschool to elementary school aged girls. The stigma of video games was also slowly being lifted. No longer were there something regulated to kids and nerd culture. WoW ran an ad campaign in the mid-2000s that featured celebrities playing the game to help prove that. Now, according to Dr. Randy Olson, scientist at Life Epigenetics Inc., the number of active users of the most popular online MMOs increased to over 11 million by 2006. Even before that, there was a steady increase in players year after year from 2000 onwards. Many MMOs started introducing the idea that you could escape in a virtual world to be somebody else, be somebody better. Isekai just took that idea a bit more literally. People began spending their free time in these massive online worldscapes to break up the monotony of their day-to-day. You could experience action, adventure, make friends, all from the safety and comfort of your computer chair. Video games provided an escape. Now, all forms of media provided that sweet escape from the normie world. But it was video games that allowed us to have direct control of our escapism. We had the power to be who we wanted to be. And if you wanted to be a Kermit smoking a blunt with 2 katanas, so be it. So with that, it only made sense to marry an escapism medium with an escapism
Caralho,
genre.
ponto.
Esse aí eu devo muito, velho. There's a seemingly endless list of main
é
their favorite video games.
Dot Hack é projeto multimídia.
Some of it
Chatão.
abject horror. And though the Dot Hack series is credited with being the first isekai anime to bring the digital world into play, I can
Caralho,
think of two others.
muito
And don't you try commenting Tron, because I said anime. Digimon aired in the late 90s and was a smash hit in both East and West and brought isekai to a digital age. For anyone who doesn't remember or wasn't old enough to remember the absolute bop that was the US theme song, Digimon. 7 Digi-friends go to a camping trip for the summer, wind up living in a digital world. Like Lane, it was sort of a middle ground, trying to parse out the genre that was gonna fit the next generation storytelling. On one hand, you have the narrative very explicitly telling you this is a digital world. On the other, it still holds the same sort of feel of some of those way back when fantasy worlds. The second series is one that didn't really make a splash, but it's still worth mentioning because it brings it around to where it all started in anime. Corrector Yui. Corrector Yui is a magical girl show, like Minky Momo and Sally the Witch, but instead of pulling the ye old classic tropes,
ai, caralho, velho, esse anime passou aqui, não passou?
Yui's an average girl in an average world until one day she's zapped into a computer and becomes
desse anime.
Corrector Yui, savior of the internet and slayer of viruses. But no matter how modern and fun the premise was, Corrector Yui's dip in popularity helped signal the end of isekai and shoujo only. Only 18 of the 52-episode series managed to get dubbed, and the manga struggled to find an audience. The oversaturation of the magical girl market in the wake of Sailor Moon's absence created an inhospitable climate for the series to take hold, and thus, it failed. Not that isekai disappeared from shoujo entirely. We still saw shows like Mahou Shoujo Tao Arusu and Sugar Sugar Rune, but we started seeing less isekai
Caralho, porra, quando eu começo a ver esse monte de coisa assim na sequência, eu fico, caralho, isso é muito fácil, mano.
The rise in popularity of this very specific brand of isekai could be attributed to needs, not in education, employment, or training, and hikikomoris, aka shut-ins. Japan's Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications estimated the number of NEETs at 630,000.
Esse vídeo prova uma outra coisa, tá? Não precisa fazer vídeo de 12 horas.
The number is at an estimated
Não.
560,000.
É só resumir, né?
Government survey released in 2016. Now, granted, these two aren't the only reason why isekais are such a big deal. To top it all off, in 2018, the Japan Times reported that while jobs are available, wages have stagnated. With an increased cost of living, less and less are able to afford the life they want and are just scraping by with their basic needs. And also, there's a famous Japanese saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. In Japanese and most Asian culture, individualism can be discouraged.
Anime de resumo, série de resumo.
But if isekai's popularity
Que demora mais tempo do que assistir a parada.
it's that this ideal is often rejected. People do want to stand out, to be different, to be the main character of the story. With a generation of young adults increasingly dissatisfied with the way their lives are turning out and turning into video games and the internet in general as a means of escapism, it's only natural that the light novels, mangas, and animes would follow suit. It helps that many of the modern-day isekai protagonists are hikikomoris, like Kazuma from Konosuba, or an otaku, like Naofumi Watani from The Rising of the Shield Hero. It's
Bizarro que quando outro vídeo parou de copiar esse aqui, é quando ele começou a falar do bagulho o mais genérico e por cima possível.
Sim. Exatamente.
É absurdo, tá?
O outro vídeo é claramente, tipo... Eu gosto muito de ISEKAI, vou pesquisar coisas sobre ISEKAI. Ele viu esse vídeo e falou, pô, maneiro. O Naofumi Otaku é otaku. Só que ele é otaku de livro. Vou fazer pegando só os pontos que me apetecem. Tanto que o final do vídeo, mais metade do vídeo pro final, é extremamente vazio, né?
Sim.
Ele recortou toda a parte do Nietzsche e Hikomori, porque...
Ele pegou só o que é positivo. Tipo, não, você pode ser quem você quiser no outro mundo.
Não, e não só isso, como ele cortou toda a parte feminina também.
Sim,
obviamente. Ele pegou...
Não importa, né? Só pra ele.
Porque ele não pode se self-insert no menino.
Sim, tentou vender o peixe, né?
Easy to find yourself believing in this escapist fantasy if the main character is like you. Isekai is a genre fueled by the desire to leave the mundane behind, to run away from our current situation into a better one, even if that better one is more dangerous. Despite the escape, there's something to say regarding the danger, which bring in aspects of thrillers and horrors to the isekai genre. Is it really better to live in a fantasy world that's much more dangerous than the mundane one, where it's slightly dangerous, just less dragons and shit? Many stories downplay the danger though, by giving their characters overpowered abilities to combat it. Think ReZero is basically anime Groundhog Day, while something like Overlord, our main character Momonga, is literally one of the most powerful characters in that universe. There are obviously isekai series that go against the OP grain, but if you're the main character of the story, you should be fine. Early shoujo isekais all featured our heroines returning home after they saved the day, while modern day isekais is split. Some of our heroes choose to stay, others to go back home, and others have no
Elas voltavam porque elas não viviam na época da não sutileza que nem a gente vive hoje. Hoje em dia não pode ter sutileza mais, acabaram. Tem que ser tudo na sua cara. Aí, né? Enfim. Não pode.
É, você vai lá e faz o L, né?
Exatamente. Se você não gostou, tu faz a L.
choice, and maybe that is saying something about the audience they're designed to appeal to. The escape from the shoujo perspective helped convey a more classic hero's journey story, and functioned as a coming-of-age story in many cases. It was all about growing up and getting stronger with each battle, while the escape from a modern isekai perspective reflects a desire to literally escape, to run away from everything and to be better. This doesn't even touch that half of these stories wind up turning into a harem show at one point or another. There's aspects of wish fulfillment in both stories, but shoujo encourages to take those wishes and turn them into a reality that fits into the mundane world, while new isekais seem to place these wishes firmly in the realm of fantasy. Now, no matter how it evolves next, the genre that spans centuries is showing no signs of dying out anytime soon, despite the bans against their submission to certain production companies or writing contests. As long as our boring, pitiful, plain mundane world is devoid of dungeons, adventures, big old harems, and UIs popping out with your skill trees, I think there will be plenty of isekais to go around. But as you watch one of the new isekais, just remember all the shoujo godmothers that started this whole genre. A whole genre of a different world. Alright, and that's all for today, y'all. Thank you so much for watching, and tell me, what are your favorite isekai shows? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to like, comment, again, subscribe, press that bell icon, and stay tuned every other Friday for more video essays. Bye-bye now. I'm gonna go back to my world now.
Ela meteu
Entregou a idade, tá? Esse final entregou a idade.
Porra,
ficou muito bom o vídeo.
Muito bom vídeo, cara. Muito bom vídeo.